Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Superman, brought to us by Kemco. Superman on the NES was the first Superman game for the Nintendo Entertainment System, and it features 5 different levels or 5 different missions for Superman to complete, facing a few different villains from the Superman comic books. Superman is a little bit of a different style game than some of the other comic book and superhero style games on the 8-bit era and other video game consoles around the same time. However, does being different really showcase a better video game? So here we go with Superman on the NES. One thing you'll notice in the background is the lack of the Superman theme, the theme that became famous from the Superman films. It's interesting that Kemco was unable to license the music and soundtracks for the NES version in North America. However, the Japanese version of the game actually does feature the classic Superman theme. Here we're watching the intro as we have the Statue of Freedom giving us a little bit of information, telling us basically to complete our goal. However, before we press start and actually boot up the game, I would like to play you the opening theme to the Superman Japanese version. Now that we're back to the North American startup screen, we'll start up the game. As you'll notice right away is the graphical and character designs for the game. You will have all the characters as kind of these small miniature forms, and it's kind of a unique style, and some people like it and others have issues with it. You always start off each of the levels inside of the Daily Planet. You can then talk to your boss, Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane, and they give you kind of your first hints on where to go and what each mission really has entailed. Right outside of the Daily Planet, which you press down in order to go through doors, you can then go over just a little bit to the right and find a phone booth. Entering it, just like you entered the door, will allow you to transform into Superman himself. As Superman, of course, you jump much higher, you attack faster, and you have much more power. It's interesting to note though, once you get too low on your health, you will end up reverting back into your Clark Kent form, which allows you to continue fighting. However, you're doing so at reduced damage. At the top of the screen, you'll notice that you have superpower and item power. Superpower is your health. That's what gets too low, you end up reverting back into your Clark Kent form. Then there's the item power, which is how many times you can use actually one of your superpowers. You defaultly have X-ray vision selected, but by pressing start you bring up the menu to change what superpower you currently have equipped. And that's indicated by the icon just to the left of superpower and item power. In the upper right corner, you'll have a help that will appear from time to time, telling you that you have a mission that's currently located and being told on your map. And then on the left side, you have the items that you're able to collect, such as the infamous subway pass, which we'll be getting in level number 2. The controls, though, are very simple. You have your attack button, and then the other button uses, well, whatever superpower you have selected, with only a couple of the superpowers being used to help you actually fight the bad guys. There's also pretty much the same bad guys in every one of the levels. There's a few variations of them, but overall, you'll be fighting a lot of the same guys each and every level. While there's one main mission to complete in every one of the levels, there's a few little side things you can do from time to time. For example, entering the jewelry shop here, you can end up saving this guy here, and by doing so, once you defeated the enemies inside, you saw that you ended up getting a blue square with the icon of a particular superpower. Collecting the blue icons increases the amount of superpower you have for that particular power. While these aren't mandatory for most of the powers, I highly recommend checking out the few that I end up grabbing, especially for the flight power, which is easily the most important power to have in the game. Having the ability to use the super flight will allow you to bypass a large portion of the map and allow you to basically fast travel the different areas a lot easier. As we traveled over to the park and enter inside of this building, you'll meet the zombies for the first time. To defeat zombies, you actually have to use the number 2 super breath or ice breath in order to freeze the zombies, and then you can actually punch and attack them. Our goal here though is to make our way to the basement, and here is where we deal with the first boss of the game. The bosses pretty much work just like normal enemies, as you'll just punch them in order to get rid of them, or you can also use your heat vision, which I mentioned earlier is really the only one you can actually use to help you defeat enemies. Here we have our first boss. She's pretty simple, she does jump high, and she does have a whip, but if you're able to hit her as soon as she lands, you'll knock her out of distance and she will not use the whip on you. Once you defeat her, you've completed level number 1. Now, I know we've talked about a lot of things, and I didn't explain everything that I was doing in that level, but following along the basic path I took, you should have no issue. It's basically an introductory level. Actually, if you just head right from the Daily Planet and enter inside every building you see, eventually you'll make it to the correct building. Not necessarily the case with the other levels, as you'll have to do a lot of different types of travel in order to make it through the other levels. Also interesting to note that at the end of level 1 you have a newspaper article that says Superman defeated the Zod Gang. Well, that's actually incorrect, as we didn't defeat the Zod Gang there at the beginning of the first level. However, we ended up fighting the Zod Gang in the final level of the game, as they are actually the final bosses. As we start up level 2, we find out about the stock market and stocks falling. Our goal here is to figure out why that is happening. Talk to Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen, you'll get a few little hints, and once we exit outside of the Daily Planet, we'll be heading over to the right and jumping into the subway for the first time. Make sure that you talk to Jimmy Olsen inside the Daily Planet to get that subway pass. The subway pass allows you to jump along the map. When you look at your map, you'll have different areas that are all connected via these lines with little dashes in them. Those signify the subway lines, and you'll have to use the correct subways in order to make it to different parts of the map. You can use your super flight ability to help you out as well, as we'll be using super flight once we've used the subway for the first time in order to go over the Senville, all the way over on the far left side of the map. Once we end up landing here, start off by heading over to the left, watching out for as many of the zombie enemies as you can. For the most part, as you'll notice, I pretty much just run from almost every normal enemy in the game, as there really isn't a benefit to fighting them. Enter into this building here, as this is actually the stock market itself, and you'll find out a few more hints of why the stock market is currently falling. These guys over here to the right, you'll be meeting a lot. These are the FBI, and they give you a lot of the key hints that you need, and specific hints, in order to figure out where you're exactly supposed to go, as they talk about the Dragon's Den. The Dragon's Den is, well, our villains for level number 2. Basically, they're going to go around and sabotage a few different areas, including setting fire to a place, and we'll have to go to that building and put out the fires in order to actually stop the Dragon Den from crashing the stock market, and then eventually chase them down and take them out ourselves. Just a little ways away from the stock market, you'll find a ladder that you can travel down. This will lead you into the underground. The underground is a place we'll be traveling to quite often in this chapter, and some other times in the other chapters as well, as we're basically trying to get from one area to another that's inaccessible just by going on the main ground. For example, when we get out of the ladder here, we find this building over to the right, and we find these Chinese guys, or members of the Dragon's Den, inside. Take out the 3 guys inside and you'll get an upgrade to your super breath. Now, the number 1 super breath is used differently than the cold breath. The regular breath, or just the high wind power breath, will allow you to put out different fires, and this is what you need in order to stop the Dragon Gang from lighting the building on fire. Once you talk to the guys outside the building, head back over to the left and travel back through the underground itself to make your way back over to where the stock market was. The other abilities that we have that I haven't talked about include the X-ray vision, which allows you to see invisible enemies, and we'll be using that a lot in level number 4. You also have the down arrow, which is your spin. This allows you to actually kind of spin and drill your way through the ground in a few specific spots, and we'll have to use that in some of the later levels. It really doesn't serve any other purpose than that. We have the up arrow, the super flight that I mentioned earlier. You have the heat vision, which allows you to fire a laser at enemies, and definitely helps out as it does a pretty good amount of damage to the enemies. And then you have your 2 breaths that we've already talked about. Once you enter here, you'll find out a little bit more. If you didn't already talk to everyone in the stock market, be sure to stop by the stock market again and talk to these guys. The game is very weird, and I have to stress that sometimes things that you want to happen or that you think you're supposed to go to next may not necessarily have triggered properly unless you've talked to all the correct people. It's one of those games where you kind of need to talk to certain people in order for other events to trigger other places. What I ended up finding was I would travel through the sewer system that I'm doing now and getting to the next area where I needed to go, but unfortunately the enemies or fire that I was expecting to see didn't appear until I back-traveled and talked to one guy in the stock market. So be sure you talk to everyone there. Thankfully, the underground areas are pretty easy to traverse. If you choose the wrong way, usually it just ends up running into a dead end, as there's only one correct way to get through the underground areas. Once you make it out of the underground once again, head over to the left and enter the next building. Here is where you'll have to use that super breath to put out the fires, and the fires are actually enemies themselves. Use your super breath to take out all 4 fires, you'll get an upgrade, and then talk to the guys outside of the area. It then mentions about the bank being robbed, so we have our next goal. You'll notice in the upper right corner now we have the help flashing. If you check out your map, you'll find specifically on the map where the help is coming from, so if you didn't already know where the bank was located, you can use that, of course, to help you out. I have to also mention the Kryptonite that you've been seeing flying all around from the different enemies that I destroy, or just by walking and jumping around the different backgrounds. You have 3 different colors of Kryptonite: green, red, and blue. The only one you need to concern yourself with is the blue one. Pick that up in order to increase your health back. Either green or red ends up decreasing your health. Thankfully, once we pop out of the underground, we're not too far from where we need to go. Head over to the right past a few zombies and go inside this building. Once inside, take out a few of the mobsters right near the door. And as for the most part, what you'll notice with the mobsters, it's really easy to take those guys out, because all you need to do is when you see one, jump a little bit into the air, and you'll jump over their bullet, and then as soon as you land, you can punch them a couple of times, get rid of them, before they're able to get off another bullet. Defeat all 4 guys here. The first guy will tell you, or ask you, if you like Chinese noodles, while the next guy will give you a hint on where you're supposed to go to next. Outside the building, talk to this guy here and he'll tell you, or ask you, to please take the criminals that you just beat up to the police station. Well, now we're traveling to the police station, and this is just the first of a few times we'll be traveling to the T-Borough police station. There's a few screens in the game that don't have enemies, as you've already seen, as it'll just be normal civilians kind of hanging out on the street. It's kind of funny that some screens and some buildings just have normal people, no problems. Then you go one screen over and all of a sudden it's filled with mobsters or other kind of guys who are just trying to take you out. Thankfully, on the screens of just normal citizens, you can casually scroll by and just walk to wherever you want to go. After walking a few screens away from the bank, enter inside the subway. Here we'll be going to T-Borough. Once you land outside, immediately hit jump so you can avoid the first zombie, and then go into the police station just to the left. The guy inside here will thank you for bringing the criminals there. He gives you also another hint on where we're supposed to go, so exit outside of the police station and walk back over to the right. Over to the right, you'll find these Chinese-like buildings and, well, the end of level 2. Defeat the few Chinese guys that attack you right at the very beginning, and then get ready to fight the dragon leader himself. The leader is a much bigger enemy than most in the game and also fires fireballs at you. He doesn't jump though, so you can launch a lot of punches into him really easily. Once you've defeated him, he ends up falling off screen and you get another newspaper clipping. Thanking you, of course, for taking out the dragon guys, but also then, of course, the second page gives you a little bit of what you're going to be doing in chapter number 3. And in level 3, our main goal here is to find a professor who was kidnapped. At the beginning, we're once again back at the Daily Planet, and our first goal is to talk to Lois Lane, who tells us about 2 different colleges. There's Mount Royal, Nordham University, and then you also have Metropolis U. Our only concern is the one in Andersonville, Metropolis U. You don't have to worry about going to the other one unless you're just looking for a power-up. This is also the chapter that we're going to be using the X-ray vision a lot, because it'll help us see all the invisible ghosts and other enemies that we have to deal with. Start off by using your flight once you become Superman, and just fly across so you can get over to where Mount Royal is. Once you've landed here, start heading over to the left. Thankfully, we land in a nice safe area so we can just avoid these couple of citizens before we end up getting fired at by a mafia man on the next screen. We have a decent amount that we have to travel in order to get to the next area. During this, though, I would actually like to mention a little bit more about the soundtrack. It's interesting to note that not only, of course, did they change the soundtrack for the North American version of the game, however, it's actually taken from another game. Endora no Hikari, a Japanese-only RPG-style game, is actually the basis and where a lot of the music in this game comes from. You'll find the Superman opening theme here, as well as a lot of the other themes in the game that you're hearing in the North American version. Since that game never came to North America, it was no really big deal for Kemco to take the music from that and put it into this game. When you make it over to this giant building here, you'll eventually run into the 2 FBI guys. Talk to the one on the left and he'll tell you about the police knowing something about the kidnapped professor. Well, guess where we gotta go to now? Well, the T-Borough police station once again is gonna be our goal in order to find out exactly where the professor has been kidnapped to. Thankfully, we don't have to go too far, as we can just keep going over to the left from where we met the FBI guys to make it to the subway station that'll take us to T-Borough. Over here, be sure to enter into the subway station and travel over the T-Borough. Inside the police station, just like we did before, talk to this guy, and he'll tell you that someone saw a man who looks like the professor near Centennial Park. Once you talk to the policeman, you'll see that in the upper right corner, the help sign is flashing again, which is located where we need to travel to in order to find the kidnapped professor. Travel back through the subway, and once you get back out, start heading back over to the right. Keep heading over to the right, including going past the same building that we met the FBI agents in front of earlier. Over here past this phone booth, we'll run into another subway, go inside here to take it to where we need to go in order to get to the park. Once out here, start heading over to the left. Thankfully, you'll have friendly civilians on the first screen, and then you'll have to face some enemies next. Watch out for this guy here and then go down the ladder. Once down here, make your way through, watching out for as many of the mobsters as you can. They're going to be in some tight areas, and with the bullets, they're going to hit you a few times, but thankfully, they don't do too much damage. You may have noticed that every level that we continue through, we end up starting with more and more health, which of course helps us out. Down here, we run into the professor who was kidnapped. He tells us that J. Fogg is the one who kidnapped him and forced him to help him with his evil huge computer. Unfortunately, where we need to go is a little bit away from where we currently are. The first thing though, of course, is we're going to have to backtrack through the underground itself. Watch out for as many of the enemies as you can, and take the least amount of damage as possible, but of course, like I said before, with the tight areas, you're gonna get hit a few times. Once back out of the underground, watch out for the couple of mob guys, and head back to the screen where the civilians are, and take the same subway we took to get here to get back. From here, you're going to want to travel a couple of screens over to the right in order to make it to another subway station. Now begin the long trek over to the right to eventually reach the building that we need to go inside where the huge computer is currently located. After traveling for what seems like forever, we've finally reached the building. Enter inside here and watch out for the guys on the top floor and drop down to the next floor. Once you make it down to the basement, watch out for a couple of guys and go over to the left. Over here you'll see the computer and it fires giant lasers that can do a lot of damage to you. Jump inside the opening, but don't get too close to the center because that'll hurt you as well, and keep punching it from this platform. After you hit it enough times, you'll end up destroying it. Once the computer has been shut down, continue back over to the right and get out of the building we're currently in. We now have to hunt down J-Falk himself in order to complete the mission. Once back outside the building though, thankfully we're really close to where J-Falk is located. In fact, it's just over to the right on the next screen. Once over here, enter inside the next building that you come to, and watch out for the guys on this floor. Take the elevator all the way over to the far right, and you'll move on to the next part of the building. Once up on here, start traveling down the stairs. Each one of the floors here has a certain set of enemies. Defeating them will get you an upgrade. These upgrades, of course, are for all the different abilities that you have, but the one I highly recommend doing is stopping on this floor and the one below it in order to pick up upgrades to your flight, as well as the spin, to make sure that you have plenty of it for the next levels. While you absolutely don't need the spin upgrade, you're definitely going to need the flight upgrade to help us out later on. Once down in the basement, take out the first couple of guys you come to, and then slowly make your way over to the left to get the next guy to spawn, and then the one right after him. Then it's time to fight Fogg the Mobster himself. He has a cane that he'll use in order to attack you, and he jumps a ton. Just try to do your best to avoid him, and don't let him land directly on top of you so you won't be able to hit him with your punches. Once he's been defeated though, you've completed the third mission, or level number 3. Level 4, though, has us challenging Lex Luthor, one of Superman's greatest villains. Start off by heading over to the right just like we've been doing before and talk to Lois Lane. She'll tell you about the Mckeesport Art Museum and how there's been a break-in there. That's our first stop so we can find out some more information. Just like always, exit outside the Daily Planet building and go inside the phone booth just over to the right. Once outside of here, start heading over to the right, going over to the next screen, and continuing on for a little bit. One thing I haven't talked about though is the flight power itself, that it can be used a lot in the game to help you shortcut the different areas. Unfortunately, depending upon where you stand on a current map, depicts whether or not you'll be able to travel to certain locations, and also having it fully upgraded will allow you to travel to farther locations. Enter inside this building, which is the art museum, and talk to both of the FBI agents. They tell you about Lex Luthor and how he created these 3 monsters that are now on the loose, and our goal for this level is to find all 3 of the beasts, defeat them, and then find Lex Luthor himself. Now, finding these guys is definitely difficult, but thankfully I already know where they're located. If you have the ability to fly over to Metropolis Park, do so that we're closer to the first location that we need to go to. Once you land at Metropolis Park or travel there on foot, we're going to be going over to the left, so if you were traveling from the right, of course, you wouldn't have had to travel as far. When you make it onto this screen with all the citizens, go past this building and then enter the subway over to the left. Do your best to avoid the zombies and head over to the right and enter inside this building. Once inside, drop down to the next floor and keep working your way down till you make it to the basement. Don't worry, there's no upgrades for you to grab inside this building. Once you make it to the basement, you'll battle with one of the beasts, and they look very similar to the fire that we put out earlier, but you won't be able to just use the wind on them to defeat them. You can use your heat vision, but it only takes a couple of punches to defeat him, and once he's taken care of, you end up getting an upgrade, and then travel back outside of the building. Once outside of the building, use your flight and head over to Mckeesport. This will get us as close as we can at this point with the flight in order to get to the next location. Once you end up landing here, head over to the left. We'll of course be looking for a subway station so that we can travel across to get to kind of what is the main center part of the town. Don't go into the first subway that you end up seeing though, keep traveling over to the left. After traveling through quite a few screens, you'll eventually make it inside of the next subway. Once here, make your way over to the left some more. Yep, seeing the same screens over and over again, which is easily one of this game's biggest downfalls. Like I said, the flight helps you out, but since it's so finicky and you'll need to hunt down the upgrades all for it, it can be tricky, and it's usually just better to walk the screens yourself than to try to hunt down all the flight upgrades. Enter inside this building here to battle the next beast. Thankfully, he's just as easy as the first one, only taking a few punches, and really all you have to do is avoid him jumping on top of you, and you'll easily defeat him. Once he's done though, be sure to grab the upgrade it gives you for your heat vision, as this will help you out a little bit with the bosses. Then as soon as you exit the building, take flight. You should be able to immediately land all the way over on the left part of this map. Once you land here over in Saniville, start heading over to the right. While it's not a huge shortcut, it'll definitely help you out as you only have to travel through a few screens in order to make it to the subway station that we need to travel through. Of course, this is the same one we've been traveling to before, where it's the location of the T-Borough police station. Head over to the right past the Chinese buildings that we had entered earlier on with the Dragon Gang, and go all the way to the right to the next screen. Keep traveling and eventually you'll make it past all the zombies and you'll make it to a screen with another building that's closed. Outside here, you do battle with the third and final beast. Just as easy as the other two, and you should have no trouble getting rid of him. Once he's done, head over to the left after grabbing your upgrade. Head all the way back over and enter the T-Borough police station like we've done many times already in the game. Talk to the FBI agents and he'll let you know where Lex is hiding, which is currently under Central Station. Head back over to the left and exit outside the building. Just to the right, re-enter the subway station. Now we begin the long trek over to where Lex Luthor is currently hiding. This is actually the last really bit of traveling we're going to have to do in the game, as the final level of the game is actually shorter than most of the other levels. Keep heading over to the right through 1,000 Mafia members, and enter inside the subway station right next to this phone booth. Once outside here, start heading over to the right, jumping over plenty more gangsters. After passing some zombies, some more civilians, enter inside this subway station. Once outside, avoid the zombie if possible, but he always seems to hit me at least once, and head over to the left. Once you make it over here, pull out the super spin and drill yourself down to the ground located here. It'll take you to another underground area, which also happens to be the hideout of Lex Luthor. There's some tight areas just like there were before, so do your best to avoid the Mafia guys and take the least amount of damage as you can. If you get any health drops during the segment, definitely pick them up, because Lex Luthor, being a boss character, can deal a decent amount of damage to you. You're also going to be fighting him in a very small area. This is easily the most complicated of the underground areas in the game. Once you make it to this ladder, climb up here and then climb up the next two ladders. Once you reach the top of the next ladder after this one, it'll be time to battle the boss himself. And I have to say, he really doesn't look like Lex Luthor at all. He in fact doesn't really look like much of a villain at all. He does have a club that he can hit you with. Use your heat vision to knock his health down a decent amount, then continue to punch him just like you would any normal enemy in the game. Once he falls off screen, you've completed level 4, and now we have only the 5th and final level to go, and we only have to defeat one more boss characters, the Zod Gang themselves, all 3 members. Like I said though, level 5 is really kind of one of the shortest chapters, and that's really because you can bypass most of the whole mission. Start off by talking to Lois Lane. She'll tell you about the BG brothers being located in areas for you to go travel to them and find out some more information. Thankfully, we don't actually have to do that. Just use your super flight and go all the way over to Metropolis Park. Now, we traveled here earlier on in the game, and you may have noticed one of those areas in the ground where you could use the super spin. Well, that's where we're going to be going to now. Head over to the left a few screens in order to find that ground in order to enter it. One thing you'll notice is all the enemies during this level are pretty much invisible, and you'll have to use the X-ray vision in order to see them. Which is annoying, but you should have plenty of X-ray vision in order to use it on just about every single screen to help you see all the enemies. The enemies are quite weird, these guys and the ghosts, but they're pretty easy to tangle with. Also, all the enemies you fight on the above ground areas of this level seemingly drop items for you to collect to replenish your different items. Climb down the ladder, use the X-ray vision to see the ghost, and then do it again if you want to on this screen in order to see the next couple enemies, or just keep punching blindly as you'll be able to hit a lot of the guys even though they're invisible. Travel all the way over to the right to the next ladder that's actually going up, not down. Once you climb up here, head over to the right and climb up the next up ladder. Up here, use your X-ray vision and take out both enemies. When you defeat the ghost enemy up here, he'll tell you that their boss is waiting for them on Freedom Island. You of course notice the Freedom statue at the beginning of the game. Of course it looks like the Statue of Liberty, but it's apparently the Freedom statue. And anyway, our goal now is to travel to Freedom Island, which is located on the very far upper left side of the map. Thankfully though, it won't be too difficult for us to travel there, especially if you picked up at least one of the flight upgrades that I grabbed throughout this run. Travel back through the underground area taking the same exact ladders we took in order to get to the room with that ghost. Once outside in the park area, equip the super flight and immediately use it. You should have plenty of ability in order to fly all the way over to the left, right near Mckeesport. Once you land, work your way over to the subway station. This is the last little bit of traveling we're gonna have to do. However, this works in our favor, because by using the X-ray vision in order to see the enemies, we can replenish some of our health by defeating some of these enemies, though sometimes it can be hard to get them to drop what you would like. But also during this little segment, we can enter one of the buildings. It's interesting that the enemies outside consistently drop health, X-ray vision, and the cold breath, while the ones inside the buildings drop different items, especially the flight. Enter inside this building here after defeating a few enemies on the outside, and defeat the mobsters inside. Hopefully, at least one of them will drop a little bit of extra buildup for your flight meter so you can replenish the amount that you've already used. Once we've done so, head over to the left of the next screen and you'll find yourself at the subway. Take the subway, and then immediately once you get outside of the subway station, use the flight once again. If you have about what I have in my super meter, you should be able to fly all the way over to Siennaville all the way on the far left. As soon as you land, use the flight once again. This way you'll be able to travel now to Freedom Island. Select Freedom Island on the map, go there, and then enter the building that you land right next to. On the first floor here, there's going to be some robots. Just jump over them and go up the stairs to the next floor. Once you're on this floor, head over to the left just a little bit, and you'll have to do battle with Ursa, one of the Zod gang members. She's a little bit difficult, and she's probably the toughest in my opinion of the three, but she also has the least amount of health. She fires lasers that can do a decent amount of damage to you, so try not to take too much damage. On the next one, you'll battle Nan, the big member of the group. Just keep punching him as he walks into you, he's really easy to deal with, then travel to the top to battle General Zod himself. This is a pretty easy battle. If you've dealt with all the other bosses in the game, even with his laser, he shouldn't be too difficult, and once you defeat him, you send the Zod gang to the Phantom Zone and complete Superman for the NES. So after some more words of encouragement from the Statue of Freedom, we then go back to the title screen and you can start the game all over again. But anyway guys, that's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.